How did you even know where to find me? She demanded. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the exhaustion of reopening a door she thought she'd closed for good. David took a cautious step forward, rain beating on his coat. His breath came in slow, visible clouds under the dim light. Amina, please, just listen. She shook her head sharply, eyes narrowing. No. I don't want to hear it. What do you want from me, David? Amina had been in the United Kingdom for 6 months. 6 long, grey, unfamiliar, cold and lonely months. No calls from David. No relationship. She'd promised to rebuild her life after her last experience. The heartbreak. When she first arrived in Cardiff, the cold had felt almost personal, a sharp, biting thing that greeted her at the airport before anyone else did. The wind cut through her coat as if testing her resolve, whispering, "Are you sure you belong here?" She laughed at her thoughts. She pulled her scarf tighter and told herself she would. Eventually, without the lies from men. Her small flat in Cathays overlooked the curve of a quiet street where the rain always seemed to linger. The first night, she sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the drizzle collect on the glass, each drop a reminder of how far she was from Nairobi's warmth, from home, from the sun that kissed her skin instead of cutting into it. She thought of David sometimes, of his voice, of their brief connection, of how easy it would have been to fall for him if life hadn't already taught her how dangerous and easy it could be. So she'd severed all communication after that call with Clara. No messages. No emails. No trace of the man who had once made her believe that love and kindness could last. She told herself it was for the best. Because the last time she had believed in love, it had left her in pieces. It wasn't so long ago, the betrayal that changed everything. Her boyfriend of 4 years, the man she thought she'd build a life with, had walked another woman down the aisle. The signs had been there, she realized now. The late-night calls, the sudden secrecy, the soft glow of his phone screen when he thought she was asleep. He had started working later than usual, even though he always said he hated late nights at the office. When she asked, he smiled, "I'm tired," practiced smile, and told her not to worry. "I will make up for it." "You think too much, Amina," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "You know you're the only one. You know how much I love you, Amina." It was all lies. But love has a way of clouding reason. So she believed him, or at least, she tried to. Then came the changes, the expensive perfume she'd never seen before, the new shirts, the frequent visits to the barber, the sudden interest in how he looked when he left the house. And the worst change of all, the growing silence between them. He no longer talked about his day. He no longer asked about hers. He came home late and went straight to bed, turning away from her touch. When she asked what was wrong, he grew defensive. Irritable and cold. Her friends noticed first. "Amina, you need to open your eyes," one of them said quietly. "He's not the same person you used to know. You deserve better, Amina. He is a cheat. He is using you." Even his own friends tried to warn her, awkward silences, sideways glances, pity in their voices when his name came up. But she ignored them all. Because sometimes, hope is the last thing to die, even when love already has. The truth came one evening, not through confrontation, but through a phone screen. A WhatsApp message from a number she didn't recognize. No words. Just a video. She pressed play, and watched him, dressed in a suit, walking hand in hand with another woman through decorated glass doors. Guests clapped and cheered. Someone shouted, "Happy bridal day." Amina's breath caught in her chest. Then came another clip, this time from Instagram, the same man, same woman, dancing in a nightclub, kissing like the world around them had never existed. The man was her boyfriend, her future partner. Her phone slipped from her hand. The silence in her flat that night was deafening. The next morning, she went to the bank, the one where they had opened a joint savings account, where every deposit was meant to be for their dream, a move abroad, studying together, building a better life. The teller looked at her with quiet sympathy. "There's no balance left, Miss Yusuf," he said. "The account's been closed." Amina swayed where she stood. her voice barely a whisper. What do you mean closed? He explained again, gently. Withdrawals. Transfers. Everything gone. Her life savings. Her deferred admission to one of the UK's top Russell Group universities, all of it built on trust, and all of it gone. He'd withdrawn the money without Amina's consent. He'd spent all the money on himself. She remembered walking out of the bank numb and sad, as if her body was moving but her soul had stayed behind. She thought about going to the police. Get him arrested? But why? Is he worth the pain? No, she'd said to herself. Nairobi's streets blurred around her. The air felt too thick to breathe. She walked her that afternoon, tears streaming down her face. That day, something else inside her broke quietly, not in anger, but in exhaustion. She spent months rebuilding herself, working long hours, saving every shilling she could. When her deferred offer came again, she took it, alone this time. By the time she boarded the plane to the UK, she had promised herself one thing: never again would she lose herself to someone else's lies. Cardiff wasn't easy, but it was hers. Her mornings started early, the cold biting her cheeks as she made her way to lectures. The university was strict, deadlines firm, professors quick to warn about plagiarism, lateness, or missed work. It was a system that demanded resilience, and Amina had plenty of that left. Her afternoons were filled with quiet study sessions in the library, surrounded by the soft hum of laptops and the smell of old paper. She liked the rhythm, the anonymity, the focus. It was the kind of peace that didn't depend on anyone else. And on weekends, when homesickness crept in, she found herself walking to a small African shop tucked behind a row of student flats. Inside, the shelves smelled like home: Maggi cubes, Royco, plantains, ugali flour, dried fish, suya spice, chin-chin. Sometimes, the woman behind the counter would ask, "Where are you from, my sister?" And Amina would smile. "Kenya." The woman would nod knowingly. "Ah, you've come from very far." She'd joke about the heat and cold. "You'll be fine, sister. Please keep warm." At night, she'd sit by her small window, sipping tea, watching the glow of Cardiff streetlights dance on the wet pavement. Her phone would buzz sometimes: old friends, new classmates, notifications she ignored. David's name never appeared again. She had left that part of her life behind, or at least, she told herself she had. But some nights, when the wind howled through the old window frames and rain whispered against the glass, she would think of that night in Nairobi, the café, the warmth, the laughter. The man who had looked at her not as someone broken, but as someone seen. And she'd whisper softly to herself, almost in disbelief, "No more heartbreaks. No more almosts." Then she'd close her notebook, turn off the lamp, and remind her heart that healing, too, is a kind of love story. Then David showed in Cardiff. "Hello, Brad Pitt." The voice pulled David sharply back to reality. He blinked, disoriented, as the room came into focus: the small Cardiff apartment, the faint hum of traffic beyond the frosted window, the soft scent of freshly brewed tea hanging in the air. And there she was. Amina, standing in the doorway, her coat still on, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. For a moment, he couldn't speak. His mind was still in Kenya. It had been just a week ago. The trip had started as an impulse, a desperate, late-night decision after months of silence. He'd tried calling, texting, messaging through every possible platform. Nothing. Her number still rang, but no one ever picked up. When the silence became unbearable, he booked a flight to Nairobi. The first thing he did after landing was to visit the café, Café Umoja, the place where they had met on his last night in Kenya. But it wasn't the same. The lights felt dimmer, the music quieter. The staff didn't recognize him. He ordered coffee, sat at the same corner table, and watched the door like a man waiting for a ghost. After 2 hours, he paid the bill, left a tip, and walked out into the humid night. He tried the Safari Lodge next, then the small bookstore they had passed that night, retracing steps that now felt like fragments of someone else's memory. Kenya, once alive with warmth and connection, felt hollow without her. Even the air seemed different, drier, distant, less forgiving. He stayed 3 nights, wandering through familiar streets, before rebooking his flight home. On arrival in London, he barely rested. The next morning, he was on a train to Cardiff, clutching a small piece of paper with an address he wasn't even sure was current. The city welcomed him with drizzle, that fine, persistent Welsh rain that clings to your coat and seeps into your bones. The streets smelled of wet stone and roasted coffee from corner cafes. He stopped at the university first, asking at the reception if they knew Amina Yusuf. The receptionist smiled politely. "Oh, she's not here today. The class went on a field trip. But maybe you can try her flat, Building 7, Catay's Terrace." Fate, or coincidence, intervened when he met another Kenyan student outside the building. The young man's eyes lit up at the mention of Amina's name. "You're looking for Amina?" "I know her. I can take you there." By the time they reached her apartment, David was running on fumes, 2 flights, 1 sleepless night, and a heart full of questions. The student left after dropping David off. "She should be back later," he said. David waited patiently. Patience was his trademark. The room was small but warm, the air faintly scented with vanilla and the sharp tang of detergent. Rain tapped softly against the window pane. He sat on the couch, staring at the quiet walls that somehow felt like her, calm, tidy, thoughtful. Exhaustion crept over him, slow and heavy. He leaned back and closed his eyes, intending to rest for a few minutes. But his body had other plans. Slowly he drifted off to sleep. Exhaustion from the round trip to Kenya and back to the UK. Hours later, the sound of a key turning in the lock brought him halfway to consciousness. A door opened. And she gasped. Then a voice, a familiar, warm, disbelieving voice. It was that of Amina. "David?" He sat up, disoriented. Amina stood there, rain-speckled and wide-eyed, clutching her bag to her chest. "You," she said slowly, her lips curving into a half-smile. "How on earth did you even know where to find me?" David rubbed the back of his neck slowly, suddenly awkward. "I had some help. A friend at your department." "Long story." Her smile deepened, teasing. "And what does Mr. Playboy want from me this time? To finish what he started?" He laughed softly, shaking his head. "That nickname is never going away, is it?" "Not anytime soon," she said, unbuttoning her coat. "So, what's this about? You've been trying to reach me for months?" "Really?" He nodded. "Calls. Texts. Emails. I thought maybe something had happened. You vanished." Amina leaned against the doorframe, crossing her arms. Her voice softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. "Nothing happened, David. I just didn't want to be anyone's story and next chapter again. Especially not the sequel to someone else's heartbreak." He sighed. "You mean Clara?" She looked at him, amused. "Ah, so you remember her name." "Yes, your fiancé. The crazy one." She laughed. "Or is it X now? Is that what you call her now?" she asked, laughing. He hesitated, then nodded. "X. It ended before I ever came to Kenya. She cheated, lied. I found out the hard way." Amina's expression softened. "Oh no, I'm so sorry, David." "Don't be," he said quietly. "It broke something in me, but Kenya put some of it back together." "You know what, David," she interrupted him. "Just this afternoon on my way back from the field trip I dreamt about you and I meeting. The rain was pouring down heavy, you were trying to explain what had happened, I was upset and angry. I didn't want to listen. I didn't give you the chance to explain what happened. In that dream you said, can't recall it was, then I froze. I looked at it, then at you. For the first time, my expression in the dream faltered, and I felt confusion replacing my anger. I'm not usually good with dreams." Amina laughed. "So what brings you here, little Mr. Playboy?" David laughed. "And now you're here to what, finish the repairs?" David smiled faintly. "Something like that." There was a pause, the kind that hummed with memory and possibility. Then he said, gently, could we go for coffee? Maybe get something to eat afterward. We've got a lot to talk about. Amina tilted her head, pretending to consider the offer. Coffee? Food? Deep emotional conversations. You really came prepared, David. He grinned. Well, I did just cross continents. She shook her head, laughing softly. You're impossible. Persistent, he corrected. Her laughter faded into a small, knowing smile. There's a cafe around the corner, one with terrible chairs but great mochas. Give me 5 minutes to change. As she disappeared into the next room, David exhaled slowly. For the first time in months, the weight in his chest loosened. Outside, the rain had stopped. Cardiff's evening light poured in through the window, pale, hesitant, almost golden, and for the first time since Kenya, the world felt right again. Sometimes, life brings us full circle, not to where we started, but to the place where we were finally ready to begin again. The cafe was small, tucked away on a quiet street near the university, the kind of place that always smelled of roasted beans, vanilla syrup, and faint traces of rain carried in by customers. A record played softly in the background, the low hum of conversation rising and falling like waves. David sat across from Amina, his hands curled around a warm cup of coffee. Steam rose between them, blurring her face just enough to make her seem like a dream, one he'd been chasing for far too long. He knew this was his chance to make things right. He should have told her everything that first time in Kenya, about Clara, about why he'd come there in the first place. Maybe things would have turned out differently. But he hadn't. And that silence had cost him. Still, as he looked at her now, laughing softly as she tore a piece from her blueberry muffin, he realized that flaws make people real, and maybe it was time to own his. Amina leaned back in her chair, her scarf loose around her neck, the late afternoon light filtering through the window behind her. Outside, Cardiff was damp and gray, but inside, the cafe was warm and alive. The air was thick with the smell of strong coffee, cinnamon, and the sweet hiss of the espresso machine. David's gaze drifted. She looked at peace, calm, grounded, beautiful in that quiet, effortless way. He took a sip from his mug, the bitterness grounding him. He wasn't the kind of man to rush love. He never had been. Over the years, he'd come to believe that relationships, like good coffee, needed time, time to brew, to breathe, to find the right strength. His mind wandered to his first year at university, a different time, a different version of himself. It was Emily. That was her name, the Australian exchange student with the kind of smile that could stop a room. She was tall, radiant, with sun-kissed hair that seemed to catch every bit of light. His friends adored her. One evening his told him, she's head over heels for you, mate, they'd tease. But David, true to form, took his time. He'd never been in a serious relationship before, and he didn't want to get it wrong. So he waited. They studied together in the library, whispering jokes between pages. They took long walks in the park after lectures, her laughter blending with the sound of rustling leaves. They were inseparable, everyone on campus knew them as a pair. But it took nearly a year before he found the courage to kiss her. His friends called him Captain D. Slow, a nickname that stuck long after Emily had left. He smiled faintly at the memory. Some things never changed. Amina interrupted his thought, and asked, have you ever felt your heart ache with longing? Amina's voice pulled him back to the present. He looked up. She was watching him, eyes searching, as though his silence might reveal more than his words ever could. Over a person, a place, a wish, she continued softly. Have you ever felt that kind of ache? He set his cup down and met her gaze. The noise of the cafe seemed to fade, the clatter of cups, the hiss of milk frothing, the chatter around them, all distant now. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, I have. David replied. She tilted her head slightly, curious. The last 6 months, he began, his voice trembling just enough to betray what he felt. Not hearing from you. Not knowing if you were okay. Every night, my heart ached with that longing. I'd lie awake wishing I was back in Kenya. wishing you were by my side, Amina." The words came slowly, but they carried weight, honest, raw, unpolished. He continued, "Every single day and night of those 6 months was hell, knowing someone I loved was out there, somewhere, on another continent, thousands of kilometers away." Amina said nothing. Her eyes glistened slightly in the amber light. David exhaled, leaned forward, and before his mind could second-guess him, he reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out 2 small envelopes, they were plane tickets, and placed them gently on the coffee table between them. Then, to the quiet surprise of everyone around, he went down on one knee. The café fell into a hush. Even the barista stopped mid-motion, milk frother hissing in the background like a held breath. Amina's hand went to her mouth. "Please say yes," he said softly. "You've got 1 week off in 2 weeks, your half-term break. I booked us 3 nights in Paris, and 2 in Milan." Her eyes widened. "David, are you serious?" "Completely." David smiled, nervously, hopeful, and sincere, that her answer would be yes. "Come with me. Let's start again, somewhere new. Just you and me." Amina laughed, half in disbelief, half in joy. The couple at the next table turned to look, grinning. Someone in the back clapped quietly, thinking it was a proposal. "For real?" she asked, still smiling, her voice trembling between laughter and tears. "For real," he said. She stood, excitement and warmth radiating from her, and they hugged, long and tight, like 2 people who had both lost and found something precious. Then, softly, she asked, "What about Clara? You said you were going to tell me about her." David smiled faintly and placed a finger gently over her lips. "Later," he said. "Right now, this moment, it's about us." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Outside, the rain had started again, a soft drizzle tapping against the glass. Inside, laughter filled the room once more, the espresso machine hissed back to life, and the smell of coffee lingered like a promise that maybe, just maybe, love deserved a second chance. Some moments aren't about words or plans. They're about courage, the courage to begin again, even after the heart has forgotten how. Paris was everything they'd imagined, and much more than I imagined. It was fun, the meals were great, the hotel was home away from home, the atmosphere and the contemporary architectural views. The air was cold, crisp, and faintly sweet with roasted chestnuts from a nearby street cart. The city glowed as if lit from within, the lights of cafes and street lamps spilling across the cobblestones like melted gold. Their taxi pulled up to a sleek 5-star hotel tucked just off the Champs-Élysées. The concierge, a cheerful, silver-haired lively man with a mischievous twinkle, greeted them with a wide grin. "Bienvenue à Paris," he said warmly, taking their luggage. "Ah, l'amour is in the air tonight, no?" Amina smiled shyly. David chuckled. "You could say that." The concierge winked. "Then Paris is the perfect place for saying everything." He laughed. As the elevator doors closed behind them, they laughed, the kind of laughter that only comes from shared shyness and new beginnings. Their suite was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to a panoramic view of the city, the Eiffel Tower gleaming in the distance like a beacon. The faint hum of Parisian traffic drifted up from below, mixed with laughter from passers-by and the distant melody of a street accordion. David set his bag down, taking in the moment. "Welcome to Paris," he said softly. Amina walked to the window, her reflection merging with the city lights. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "And thanks, David," she said. He nodded, but his eyes were on her. "Yes, it is." The next morning, they did what every couple in love, or on the verge of it, must do in Paris. They went to the Eiffel Tower. The sky was a perfect silver blue, clouds curling like lazy smoke. Tourists posed for pictures, children laughed, and the metallic scent of the Seine mixed with the warmth of freshly baked croissants from a nearby stall. Amina and David walked hand in hand along the promenade, their fingers laced, their laughter blending with the chatter around them. People turned to look, a few smiled, others stared, as if they'd never seen love look quite like this, an African woman and a British man, together, radiant, unbothered by the world's gaze. David lifted his phone and took a photo of her with the tower behind. Perfect, he murmured. Delete that, she teased. My hair isn't even right. That's exactly why it's perfect, he said. Real. She rolled her eyes, laughing. Ha ha ha, Captain David Slow has jokes now. That evening, the city was fully transformed. The hotel lobby shimmered under crystal chandeliers as they descended the escalator together, Amina in a flowing red dress that seemed to command the light, David in a tailored black suit. For a second, he forgot how to breathe. You look good, he began, then paused, shaking his head. Amina, I don't think you've ever looked this beautiful. She smiled, a little flustered. Thank you, David. You're quite the gentleman tonight. He offered his arm, grinning. Shall we? Lead the way, Captain David Slow. The restaurant was softly lit, every table a small island of intimacy. The scent of butter and garlic filled the air, mingling with the low murmur of conversation and the faint sound of a violin playing somewhere near the bar. They dined slowly, fine wine, creamy risotto, tender lamb. Between courses, they shared glances that said more than words ever could. The atmosphere electric, charged and filled with love. Then, as dessert arrived, 2 delicate plates of chocolate mousse and strawberries, a familiar melody began to play over the speakers. Amina's eyes lit up. Is that song what I think it is? David smiled. Krista Berg. Lady in Red. He stood, extending a hand toward her. Dance with me please, he'd asked. She laughed softly. Here? In the middle of everyone? Yes. Especially here. He didn't wait for her to decide. He took her hand, led her gently to the small dance floor, and within moments, they were swaying to the slow, timeless rhythm of the song. Amina enjoyed every minute of it. Her red dress moved like silk against him. The singer's voice wrapped around them, soft and nostalgic. I've never seen you looking so lovely as you did tonight. For the first time in months, maybe years, David felt peace. Later, over dessert and coffee, their conversation deepened. Amina leaned forward, her elbows on the table, curiosity bright in her eyes. Tell me about Clara. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. You really want to talk about that tonight? Are you sure? David, she said gently, you said no secrets. Not this time please. He nodded, took a sip of his coffee, and began. He told her everything about his last relationship with Clara, the cheating, the manipulation, the nights of shouting, the lies about being pregnant to keep him tied down. She even got her aunt to call me, he said, shaking his head. The poor woman kept begging me to do the right thing and marry her. The whole thing was absurd. Amina's hand flew to her mouth, half in disbelief, half in laughter. Pregnant? You're joking. Are you serious? I wish I was, he said. It was chaos. Like living in a soap opera. Clara ended the relationship. Her cheating. She probably thought I'd never find out. Cheaters often think they are smart, even smarter than the person they are cheating on. David said. They both laughed, loud enough to draw a few curious glances from nearby tables. Amina wiped a tear of laughter from her eye. My goodness, David, you really do know how to pick them. Apparently, he said, chuckling. After dinner, they stepped out into the cool Paris night. The air smelled of rain and wine and perfume. Cars glided past, their headlights reflecting on the wet pavement. Street lamps shimmered like small suns. David held Amina's hand tighter. No Uber, no taxis, he said. Let's walk. It's Paris. We should earn it. So they walked, past the Seine, past the glow of bakeries closing for the night, past lovers huddled on park benches whispering in half languages. The sound of their footsteps mingled with laughter, horns, and music from an open-air jazz bar nearby. Every street corner felt like a painting, every glance, a moment suspended. And they enjoyed the walk. Amina looked up at him, smiling. You really think we can start over, don't you? He nodded. I don't just think it. I feel it. And I know it, Amina. Back at the hotel, the night softened. Amina kicked off her heels, the carpet plush beneath her feet. She sat on the bed, laptop open, the glow from the screen painting her face in pale light. David stood by the window, watching the city sparkle below. "Assignment due?" he asked, smiling. She looked up. "Always." He laughed. "Some things never change." "Neither does Captain David Slow," she said, eyes twinkling. He turned, leaned against the window frame, and smiled. "Maybe that's a good thing." Outside, Paris pulsed quietly, alive, electric, timeless. And for that night, everything was exactly as it should be. Some cities heal you without trying. Some nights remind you that love, when it returns, feels exactly like coming home. The lobby of the hotel was softly lit, the marble floors glowing under the golden chandeliers. It was late, and it was nearly midnight, and the city outside hummed with its last breath of the day. Paris, the eternal city of lovers, seemed to whisper through every open door and windows, every passing taxi, every sparkle of light beyond the glass. David and Amina stepped inside, hand in hand, still flushed from the night's walk. The scent of rain lingered in the air, that clean, sharp smell of wet stone and perfume. Behind the counter stood the same concierge who had greeted them when they first arrived, the friendly Frenchman with kind eyes and a perpetual smile. He lit up as soon as he saw David and Amina. "Aha, le couple est de retour," he said, beaming. "Back from your adventures, yes?" David smiled. "We are. And we might have walked half of Paris tonight." The concierge laughed, eyes twinkling. "Then you have truly seen the city. The best way to know Paris is with tired feet and a happy heart." Amina chuckled, brushing rain from her coat. "He's right, David. Paris feels even more beautiful when you walk it." "Ah, Madame Kenya," the concierge said, turning to her with a soft grin. "Your country Kenya, a lovely country and great people, welcomed me once with both hands. I spent 5 of the best years of my life there in Kenya, so many memories," he said. Amina blinked, pleasantly surprised. "You lived in Kenya? Really?" "What?" she asked, laughing. He nodded proudly. "Yes. In Nairobi first, then Mombasa. I had a small business, mobile phones, accessories, small shops here and there. The people, they were good to me. Honest, warm and loyal. I owe much of my life to Kenya." Amina's eyes softened, a smile blooming slowly. "I can imagine," she said. "We have a saying, Karibu Nyumbani, it means, welcome home. Everyone is welcome to make Kenya a home." The concierge's face lit up with recognition. "Yes. Karibu. I remember. Such beautiful people. Such was the food. I enjoyed it." He laughed, his voice carrying through the quiet lobby. "Your ugali and tilapia. My God, I miss it, sister." He laughed. Amina laughed too, that deep, genuine laugh that always seemed to make David's chest tighten a little. He stood back, watching them, his heart full. It was rare to see her so relaxed, so alive. The concierge continued, his tone softening. "But life, she gives, and she takes." His eyes clouded for a moment, the warmth giving way to a quiet shadow. "I lost my wife in Kenya," he said. "A terrible road accident. My son and I, we survived, but the hospital bills took everything. When she passed away, I came back here to France, to start all over again." The words hung in the air, fragile, heavy, and achingly real. "I'm so sorry," Amina said softly, reaching out and touching his arm. He smiled, faint but sincere. "Merci, madame. That's life, no? It gives and it takes. But it also gives again, in small moments like this." They spoke for a while longer, about Kenya, about second chances, about how sometimes home isn't a place but a feeling. David found himself saying little, content just to listen, to watch the way Amina's eyes glowed as she spoke of her homeland. When they finally said goodnight, the concierge gave a small bow. "Bonne nuit, my friends. May Paris be kind to your dreams. David and Amina thanked him, smiling, and took the escalator up to their floor. The soft hum of the machine filled the silence as they ascended, side by side, their reflections blending in the mirrored walls. She leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. "He's such a kind man," she murmured. "There's something about him, something warm." David nodded. "He reminded me of you, when we first met in Kenya," he said quietly. "I couldn't take my eyes off you. Remember the departure lounge? After I had checked out, I prayed for our flight to be delayed, or cancelled. Because I wanted to see more of your beautiful eyes. And your smile in those uniform," he said. Amina smiled, eyes half closed, as the doors opened with a gentle chime. "I felt the same, David. I wanted to run after and beg for you to stay longer. When I heard the sound of your plane taking off, it brought tears and sadness. Because I wished you stayed a bit longer in Kenya. Your only memory was the memory we had in the café that night." The next morning came too soon. The room was filled with soft golden light leaking through the curtains, and the faint sound of Paris waking, the roll of trolleys on cobblestone, distant chatter, the clink of plates from breakfast service below. Their flight to Milan was scheduled for late morning. Amina packed her things neatly, humming to herself. David watched her from across the room, that same calm grace in every motion. "Are you ready?" David asked. She turned, smiling. "Always ready, David." She hugged and gave him a kiss. They checked out of the hotel, waving goodbye to the concierge, who blew them a playful kiss and shouted after them, "Au revoir, mes amis. Come back soon." David laughed. "He's unforgettable." "Like Paris," Amina said. At the airport, the air smelled faintly of jet fuel and coffee. The departure lounge buzzed with movement, announcements over speakers, rolling luggage, the hum of travelers between worlds. Amina sat beside him, flipping through her phone, while David scrolled absent-mindedly through his messages. He smiled to himself, thinking how perfect everything had been, the walks, the laughter, the dancing, the simple ease of being with her. Then, his phone buzzed. A notification flashed across the screen. It was Clara. And it was a text message. "We need to talk. It's urgent. And it's important." David was used to her style of messaging people. She was brash, no elements of common courtesy. And of course authoritative. That was Clara. For a second, he just stared at it, the words sharp and cold against the soft warmth of the morning. Amina looked up, noticing his stillness. "Is everything okay, David?" she asked. He blinked, locked the phone, forced a smile. "Yeah. Nothing serious. Just work stuff," he replied. But the truth was, the spell had cracked, just slightly, like fine glass under pressure. He slipped his phone into his pocket and turned to her. "You ready to fly?" She grinned. "Let's go, Captain David Slow." He laughed, but inside, his thoughts drifted to London, to unfinished stories and the ghosts he thought he'd left behind. Sometimes the past waits quietly, just long enough for the heart to open again. And then it knocks, reminding you that love and life rarely move in straight lines. That evening Clara arrived in Milan uninvited, and unannounced. The evening air in Milan was heavy with humidity and the faint scent of rain-soaked concrete. Neon lights flickered off wet pavements as taxis hissed through puddles. The grand marble facade of the Hotel Excelsior glowed under the city lights, its revolving doors spinning steadily as guests came and went. Then, a woman appeared, hurried, frustrated, dragging 2 heavy suitcases behind her. Clara. Her expression was a storm barely contained. Hair slightly unkempt from travel, her coat clutched tightly around her body, and yet, there it was, a small but unmistakable bump beneath the fabric. The kind that didn't just suggest pregnancy, but declared it. She stopped under the awning, her breath visible in the cool night air. Her phone buzzed again in her hand. The screen lit up, delivered, message, "We need to talk. It's urgent." Still no reply. "Typical," she muttered, jaw tightening. She adjusted her grip on the luggage, muttering curses under her breath as one will snagged on the curb. The hotel porter rushed forward, polite and efficient, but she brushed him off sharply. "I've got it," she snapped, her British accent slicing through the air. Inside the lobby, the warmth hit her immediately, perfumed air, polished marble floors, and the low murmur of Italian and French voices. A grand chandelier glittered above, reflecting gold off her travel-worn face. She marched to the reception desk, irritation in every step. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tight but steady. "I'm looking for a guest, David Whitmore. Room under his name, I believe." The concierge, a young Italian man with immaculate posture, checked the register. "Yes, Signorina, Mr. Whitmore is staying with us. But he has gone out for the evening." Clara froze, a muscle twitching in her jaw. "Out?" He nodded politely. "See, with another guest. They left not long ago." Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Of course they did," she whispered, almost to herself. She stepped aside, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Near the lobby's center, a grand mirror caught her reflection, tired eyes, smeared lipstick, and that growing bump beneath her coat. For a brief second, her anger wavered. Her hand drifted to her stomach, resting there lightly, as if unsure whether it was a comfort or a weapon. "All right then," she murmured under her breath, straightening up. "If David won't come to me, I'll find him myself." She dragged her suitcase toward the elevator, ignoring the curious glances from a pair of guests who whispered in Italian. The bellhop called after her politely, but she didn't turn around. In her mind, she replayed the unanswered messages. The silences. The image of David with her, that woman from Kenya. Her pulse quickened. The air in the lift felt too warm, too close. She closed her eyes briefly, one hand gripping the rail. "Not this time," she whispered. "He doesn't get to run this time." Outside, Milan glowed, elegant, untouchable, and alive. But inside that hotel elevator, the storm had already begun. From Kenya with love. To be continued in Part 3.